It is Spider-Man Far From Home versus Spider-Man 2. Who wins this movie battle fight to be objectively the better movie? Stick around to find out. Welcome to the objective review of Spider-Man Far From Home. And this is going to be a very special objective review because it's going to be a verse match versus Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 2. And there will be spoilers for Spider-Man Far From Home and also Spider-Man 2. You should have watched the movie by now, but if you haven't, go watch it. These movies have so many similarities. They're both the sequels to the first film. They both feature an antagonist who is somewhat of a mentor character to Peter Parker. In both of these movies, Spider-Man reveals his identity to MJ. These two movies are very similar, but we have to figure out which one is objectively the best one. And I do that by breaking the movie down into 6 categories and assigning weights of them, depending on the genre, to have the most honest, unbiased, objective review as possible. So let's start with the first category of story. In Spider-Man Far From Home, Peter Parker is dealing with sort of the aftermath of Endgame. He's dealing with what that means to be the new Tony Stark of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And in the story, we have Mysterio, who is a hero from another Earth, who is helping Peter Parker and S.H.I.E.L.D. stop the elementals who will wreak havoc on the world and possibly destroy the whole world, I guess. But that's actually not the case. Mysterio is actually just a jilted ex-employee of Tony Stark who wants to get back at him and just get back at the world for villainous reasons. He's also a mentor to Peter in this, and Peter kind of looks up to him, and Peter gives him the necessary tools to pretty much take over the world. In Spider-Man 2, Doc Ock is a world-renowned scientist. He also serves sort of as a mentor to Peter Parker, and his work is just very important. It will advance technology greatly, but things go awry, and his technology kind of takes over him, sort of twisting his mind and turning him very villainous. One of my biggest issues with Spider-Man Far From Home is that it is just so very predictable. You can see in my trailer review that I pretty much called that Mysterio was going to be the villain, that he was just pretending to be a hero. And I'm not, a genius, by the way. I think everyone had this same opinion. Watching this movie is like watching a very simple magic trick that you already know how it's done. And it kind of goes on for a long time and goes on for like an hour until they do the prestige. And by that point, just like, I knew this was gonna happen. This was a waste of my time. Mysterio here is just like any other jilted villain. Like, his motivations are pretty dumb. Like, he's no better than the Riddler from Batman Forever, or from whoever that guy was in Iron Man 3, the Mandarin. Like, they're just so butthurt over the good guy doing something seemingly not all that bad to them. Like, I think these characters need more weight, more background to really inform the character. To contrast that, in Spider-Man 2, Doc Ock has his own arc. Like, even when he does turn evil, that's not necessarily because of him. And he wants to continue his experiment because he is a mad scientist. Like, that is so interesting, that science, something that has been used throughout history to sort of, at least in his world, to advance medicine, advance technology, and help people. And here he's doing it just for himself as Doc Ock. And towards the end there, he has his own arc of like, no, I'm in control. I'm going to go down with this thing that I built myself. As for the character of Spider-Man, I feel like both these movies are fairly adequate. I think the whole Spider-Man No More thing in Spider-Man 2 wasn't done all that well, and it didn't make that much sense. I actually like Peter's character in Far From Home. I get his sense of the way the world is on him, after everything happened in Endgame. And he just wants a break. Like, he deserves a break. That being said, he does come off as a really stupid, naive, childish character here a lot of times. I mean, he gave over a weapon of mass destruction to a guy he met just a day ago. I do feel like Tony Stark and his presence is just weighing down this series of movies, that this movie, like Spider-Man himself in these movies, can't stand on its own. In both of these movies, I did love the side story of MJ and Peter and how their relationship is blossoming. But all in all, I feel like Far From Home lacked any real story, and a lot of it didn't make any sense. So it gets a 6 out of 10, where I feel that Spider-Man 2 had a great villain, it had a great story, and it gets a 8 out of 10. Let's on to emotion. I feel like the emotion in Far From Home was lacking. I feel like this is the most empty feeling Spider-Man movie I've ever watched, and that even includes Spider-Man 3. I think the best thing it had going for it was the MJ and Peter dynamic. Just Peter just trying to work up that courage to ask MJ out on a date, and just how, you know, they're both sort of into each other. You know, I think I can just kind of relate to that. For Spider-Man 2, one of the most emotional moments I had was in that train sequence. After he stops the train and his body just collapses and the people of New York catches him. I just love that sense of community that New York has and provides in these movies. And they all kind of look at him all with different perspectives. Like one guy says, like, this kid is no younger than my son. And the way they all band together to stand up against Doc Ock, and they were going to protect Spider-Man no matter the cost. And I feel like the MJ and Peter reveal here was done better than in Far From Home. In Spider-Man 2, like, MJ looks at him after he saves her. It's a pretty grand moment, and they just share this look with one another. While Far From Home, it's sort of played for a little bit more laughs, and there just isn't that moment of like, yeah, finally, like they finally figured out who each other are. I did love how both their romances blossomed. That by the end they're both dating, and they just came together in such a great moment that they're ready to live their lives as both Spider-Man and as Peter Parker. But I still would have liked more from Far From Home, so it gets a 7 out of 10 for emotion, while Spider-Man 2 gets an 8.5 for emotion. Next is on to action. When it comes to Far From Home, I did love a lot of the Mysterio action scenes. It was really just him messing with Peter's head. I think those were done really well. But when it came down to just Spider-Man versus the drones and versus the elementals, that was very uninteresting to me, because it's just Spider-Man punching and fighting a bunch of lifeless objects. Like, it carries no weight. There's no impact to me when he punches them or when he hits or destroys one. Now, on the flip side of that, for Spider-Man 2, the Doc Ock versus Spider-Man scenes I feel like are far more heart-pounding. I feel like the way the direction is done is you feel every punch on the face. It's just way more intense, and you're way more invested in it. But these two are fairly close. Far From Home gets a 7.5 out of 10, while Spider-Man 2 gets an 8 out of 10. That's on to comedy. Without a doubt, Far From Home is hilarious, and I think every single character brings their A game when it comes to comedy. All these actors have just some great comedic chops. I mean, all of them. Tom Holland is great. His relationship with his Aunt May and then Happy, that's all hilarious. There's his best friend and MJ, and his best friend gets into a relationship with another girl. All that's done really, really well. As for Spider-Man 2, this is not a strong suit for Spider-Man 2. There isn't like a single laugh out loud moment. There's just a couple chuckles here and there. So more work could be done there. Best thing I can say is that they didn't force comedy to get in the way of any emotional moments. So for comedy, Far From Home gets an 8 out of 10, and Spider-Man 2 gets a 6 out of 10. That's on to acting. I feel like these movies are fairly different when it comes to the acting performances of the actors. I feel like in Far From Home, it really comes down to chemistry. All these actors have amazing chemistry together. Jake Gyllenhaal works really great with Tom Holland, and Tom Holland and Zendaya are amazing together. I love seeing them. They work off each other so well. They have such great chemistry that you really buy into the fact that they are friends and they can become more than friends. As for Spider-Man 2, I don't feel like they have nearly as good chemistry, but they're given much more material to work with. I mean, even James Franco has a lot of great scenes where he's just like pissed off at the world, and he's pissed off at Peter. When he finds out that Spider-Man is Peter, his reaction to that. Alfred Molina as Doc Ock shows a great range here. He has to be somewhat inspirational to Peter, but also just so downright villainous, but also redemptive. So these are very neck and neck. I feel like they're two different approaches, and they both get an 8 out of 10. That's on to directing. For Far From Home, when it comes down to directing, I feel like it really exceeds in the visuals. I mean, the visuals that Mysterio does on Peter are done so magnificently well. Great job there. This movie is paced really well. I feel like it was maybe just a little slow in the first 30 minutes, but that's okay because that's all set up. And of course, the wardrobes I think are done fantastic. This Spider-Man suit might not be my favorite. I think my favorite's from the Amazing Spider-Man 2. That's an amazing suit. And of course, that Mysterio suit looks amazing. I don't even love Mysterio like that, but his suit just looks amazing. I almost bought the pop figure for him. I don't think the cinematography here was that amazing. I don't think there was any like glorious just still screenshots, but it was done fair enough. As for Spider-Man 2, the visuals were amazing for its time, but we had to be objective here and say that they don't hold up necessarily to today's standards. They're still okay though. I do still absolutely love the way that Sam Raimi directs Spider-Man swinging through the city. I will say the pacing did not age so well in this movie. It kind of drags a little bit there in the middle, especially when Peter loses his powers for whatever reason there was. And I do think the costume design here was done amazing also. They reused the suit from Spider-Man 1, which was still a really good suit, and Doc Ock's tentacles, they all look amazing as well. So here, they both do a really good job. They both get an 8 out of 10. All right, here is the verdict. Our weighted average score for Spider-Man Far From Home is a 7.3 out of 10. I was really hoping that this movie would be better than what it was. For Spider-Man 2, it is an 8.1 out of 10. Still an amazing movie, even if it was created more than 10 years ago. But those are just my thoughts. Let me know what your thoughts are. Let me know which movie you think did better in all these categories, and which one do you think is the better movie? And were there any other similarities between these two movies? All right, that's it. If you like this video, please like, comment, and consider subscribing. And sincerely, thank you for watching. I'm out.